The official after-action report sets up the following activity this way. December operations of the Third Army divided themselves into two phases. As the month began, the Army was advancing toward the Siegfried Line in continuation of the operation, which had opened on November 8, succeeding during the early part of the month, in completing capture, by assault of remaining forts at Metz, a feat unprecedented in modern history. Later in the month, just previous to the date set for a new operation designed to crash through the Siegfried Line, and drive to the Rhine River, the 3rd U.S. Army was called upon to swing northward, and smash into the left flank of the enemy's Ardennes salient. This was accomplished with such success, that by the close of the month, the enemy was being forced to shuttle divisions from the point of his attack and from his north flank, to combat the growing menace of the 3rd U.S. Army on the south.
So, on December 16, the 5th Division began its attack on the city of Saarlottern. Unknown to them, that morning, the Germans were attacking 100 miles north in the Ardennes forest. The Battle of the Bulge had begun.
Command orders for the 12th Corps were as follows. 12th Corps, 4th and 5th Infantry Divisions, 10th Armored Division, hold west bank of Moselle River in zone. On Army order, attack initially north on the right of 3rd Corps, and destroy enemy in zone. Push aggressive patrols to east and northeast to determine location of crossings of Sauer River and Our River, and strength of enemy in Eschernach area. Be prepared on Army order to change direction of attack to the northeast to force crossings and penetrate Siegfried Line in zone, and advance in direction of Bitburg. Maintain contact with 20 Corps on south, and 3rd Corps on west. Protect right, east, flank of 3rd U.S. Army. Here we have the official Army report, calling Gumps' 5th Division's successful conquest of the fortress Metz, as a feat unprecedented in modern history. Then, the division is given the task of penetrating the Siegfried Line and entering the Saar region. We saw earlier how difficult it was for the Third Army to remove itself from combat in the Saar, turn 90 degrees to the north, and play an integral role in causing the German armies to divert their attention, from the Bulge to their southern flank. The importance of the 5th Division's actions at this time are incalculable. Once in the staging area, the regiment was briefed on the situation that required a diversion of 3rd Army troops, to face the enemy in Luxembourg and Belgium. The 11th Infantry's mission was to cover the formation of the 12th Corps while remaining in the vicinity of Luxembourg. Troops of the 11th hiked 6 miles from Saarlottern to Ettersdorf under long-range German artillery fire. Shell upon shell straddled the main Saarlottern route, and although several casualties were reported, the march to the entrucking point of Ettersdorf continued unbroken. Here, battalions became motorized and moved 50 miles eastward to Dist-Tirop, France, which was to serve as the regimental assembly area.
Though still in the thick of battle in the Saar region, 5 days later, the 11th Regiment was ordered to disengage, and march, then truck, approximately 55 miles north. Recall also, that this was in the midst of a snowstorm which made roads virtually impassable.
Von Rundstedt's counter-offensive appeared to be making good progress. Therefore, it was not surprising that the move, as a whole, was viewed by the American troops with some trepidation. Listen to the story of the 10th Tank Battalion. The 10th accompanied Gumps' 5th Infantry Division, on its move from the Saar region in the south, to the Bulge, in the north. As they began their advance to the north, the atmosphere was one they had never experienced before. It almost brought on willies. It was grim, foreboding, menacing, intimidating, ominous, and depressing. They had experienced the lovely summer and perfect tank weather across France, and the atrocious fall, and horrible tank weather in Lorraine. They were about to experience something totally new and different, a winter in the Belgian Ardennes. In fact, winter officially began just the day before. An engineer who was thrown into the fray, said, "We learned a greater appreciation for those men who were constantly in these circumstances. We learned the hardships and uncertainties of battle, the loss of friends and comrades." Remember, at this point, Gumps has been in virtual daily battle for 4 months. 4 months of hell. Another veteran commented as they approached Bastogne, bodies and body parts of GIs were sticking out of the snow.
The regimental history book describes the 11th Regiment's move this way.
While the 5th Division was still in the thick of the battle in the Saar region until noon, December 21st, later that day, in staggered order of march, Gumps' 3rd Battalion, along with the 1st and 2nd Battalions of the 11th Infantry, of the 5th Division, re-entrucked. They then moved directly north into Luxembourg. Thus, less than 24 hours following the receipt of move orders, the regiment had rolled through areas of 3 European countries, Germany, France, and Luxembourg.
It is a remarkable feat in itself for Patton's Third Army, poised to strike eastward, to turn north and race 125 miles to Bastogne. December 20th, the Battle of the Bulge is in its 5th day. American forces are reeling under the impact of the mighty German offensive. General Patton and his Third Army are driving north toward Bastogne to counterattack. A freeze sets in, making it easier for the roads to support the heavy armor. Patton's army drives in a non-stop convoy through day and night. To accommodate the speed, vehicles are ordered to keep their headlights on, which is definitely not by the book. Lookouts keep a sharp watch for enemy planes and the vehicles in front of them. If there's the slightest accident among the hundreds of trucks and tanks, it can slow the entire division's progress. Radio silence is maintained, so no one, not even the Army, knows what's going on. December 21st, a wintry snow falls throughout the Ardennes. St. Vit is taken by the Germans. Now the center route across the Ardennes is wide open. The Germans flow around Bastogne on all sides, encircling the American forces there.
The German attack probably could not have succeeded without total surprise. Even though the American defenses were very weak, they were weak because the Americans thought the Germans were weak in the same sector. And what the Germans did was to move the panzers by night to get them close to the lines. They achieved total surprise. Partly, again, because the American intelligence people and the Americans in general were so overconfident. They never expected an attack at that time or that place. In fact, they thought the Germans were beaten. after the race across France. The Germans were not beaten, and the surprise was effectively gained. The result was that some American troops were isolated.
December 22nd, the situation in Bastogne grows desperate. Ammunition is short. McAuliffe's artillery battalions are down to 10 rounds per gun, and it's still snowing. The cold causes more casualties than German gunfire. Frostbite is rampant among the troops. The Germans send an emissary to Bastogne with an ultimatum. Since the Americans are surrounded and there is only one possibility to save them from death, an honorable surrender. General McAuliffe's reply is short and to the point.
He sent his answer back to the German authorities, and his answer was nuts.
McAuliffe's bravado is based on the expectation of the Third Army. General Patton's timetable is a critical factor. If the Germans move on Bastogne, they can easily take it at this point. The surrounded and undermanned U.S. Army watches and waits anxiously for reinforcements. The freezing cold conditions don't make it easier for either side.
Official maps, that the besieged city of Bastogne was being attacked, primarily by the Panzerlehr Armored Division. It was being defended by the 101st Airborne Division. Notice the advance of the Nazi army to the north and to the south, while Bastogne, in the center, was holding out.
It was the most miserable place I've ever been in my life. Even today. On a real cold night, we go to bed and my wife will tell you that the first thing I'll say is, I'm glad I'm not in Bastogne.
The Germans wanted to get Bastogne because of the road network. That's why it was such an objective. So that's where we had to hold, which we did.
318 trucks come in around noontime, and by that evening, everybody was loaded and moving out.
We were short of equipment. We didn't have enough ammunition. We didn't have enough warm clothes. But we had confidence that our higher military authorities would get to us whatever we needed. That when we got up there, we didn't know what we were getting into. There was very little information, only that the Germans had broken through.
We went down, loaded on the trucks, and another truck came by with weapons, and they pitch weapons up to the truck. You catch a weapon, that's what you got until you got to Bastogne.
As it worked out, there's some men actually got on the trucks and left for Bastogne and didn't have a rifle.
When we got there, we saw men singly and in twos and threes working their way back, some of them even without weapons, without equipment. Some of them were terrified.
They were beaten up, and every one of them were telling us, you know, they're going to kill everybody. They're running over everybody.
They couldn't believe when they saw us up there that we intended to set up defensive lines and to stop the Germans. They said they couldn't be stopped.
We went down to town, we started taking up their weapons and their ammunition.
Asking the guys that's retreating, you got any extra ammunition or a hand grenade you don't want? Oh yeah, you could hear the firing going on up ahead, and we're marching towards it with hardly any ammunition.
We marched through the night and went up to the forward side of Bastogne and dug in, and then it snowed.
Snow, cold up to your rump. We didn't have no winter clothing or nothing. And that's where a third of the doggone casualty was either frostbite or trench foot or whatever you want to call it.
Bad move. A lot of snow, a lot of everything you didn't like. Ooh, cold place.
At this particular time, we was on top of a kind of a hill, and top of the hill had pine trees, and we set up our positions around the fringe of the woods.
In Belgium, the trees are planted. They don't grow like they do in Maine. They're rows of trees. You look down a row and you can see a half a mile. And there was on top of this hill, there was a ridge with a tree line. We were dug in on that ridge. Germans knew right where we were, and they really gave us a shellacking.
To infantrymen in wartime, the Mother Earth is your best friend. And you can always dig a hole and get out of sight, you know. We dug plenty of those. Yeah.
You'd be surprised how quick you can get through that hard ground when somebody's shooting at you and them shells are falling. Now you can make fast work of it. We just have to dig that hole.
Well, we say we became experts on foreign European soil. We dug in, and two people could dig a better hole than one.
In the ground that's frozen, it takes quite a while. You just chip it out. And by the time you get it done, they whistle for you to, we're moving out. And you go someplace else and dig another one.
Now, you must understand, we were surrounded. The Germans were about maybe 100 yards away from us.
No matter where you looked around the circle, you could see artillery flashes. So we knew from that we were surrounded.
But we went through a couple of shellings at Bastogne that were earth-shaking. If you lived through them, you remember them for the rest of your life, and I'm not sure you're the same for the rest of your life after you lived through them. You never forget them.
There was one moment there that I remember vividly. I'll never forget it. One of the guys got hit in the arm with a piece of shrapnel, took his arm off above the elbow. And they were taking him out. He said, "Get my wristwatch off my arm." And before they took him out, that always stayed with me. I mean, a calm voice and everything, "Get my wristwatch off my arm."
We went in on Normandy. We had kicked the Germans' butts all over northern France and the Brittany Peninsula. And we hadn't lost a battle. And then the Bulge hit. It wasn't fun anymore. The snow was waist deep in some places, and you didn't go very far. Pour some water in your hand, you'd have an ice cube. It was that cold.
This dead Nazi soldier on the side of the road is spit on by a GI.
In the Bulge, the Allies are not only fighting the Germans. The weather, minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit, the coldest winter on record in Europe. In some places, the snow is knee-deep. In other spots, snow cover is sparse, but the wind chill is severe. Foxholes become frozen tombs. Frostbite takes 15,000 men off the line.
They didn't have the right boots.
It subjected the soldiers who fought on all sides to stresses and strains that the human mind and the human body can barely tolerate.
To make matters worse, weapons jam up due to the frigid conditions. Soldiers urinate on their rifles to unfreeze them and manually feed ammo. The Battle of the Bulge becomes the longest and bloodiest shootout the U.S. ever fought. Total American casualties, over 80,000.
It's no fun to say to men that you love, go out and get killed. And we've had to say it. And by God, they have gone.
same day, Patton's advance columns reached the southern end of the Bulge. The German 7th Army is prepared for them. Patton's tanks, accustomed to advancing miles at a stretch, are now forced to fight for every inch of land. The snow-covered muddy ground keeps the reinforcements from reaching Bastogne. Day, December 23rd, dawns bright and sunny. Perfect flying weather. Americans in Bastogne cheer as Allied planes fly overhead to bomb and strafe the... Not all that's needed, but enough to enable the Americans to hang on.
That was a big morale builder because we needed support, and we got this support just in time to bolster our spirits. Even though we were still eating K and C rations, it was a nice holiday time.
By Christmas Eve, the battle has been raging for 10 days. But even with the bloodshed and animosity, there is still a holiday spirit.
German occupation troops would be in these French villages, and because it was Christmas and because they were lonesome, they would hand out chocolate or whatever they had, and the French would accept it, and for one night at least the hostility was tempered. But it wasn't unique. There are many stories like that in the history of warfare. There are lots of stories in wartime about things like this happening.
We were bivouacked, and we had taken over this little farmhouse that was deserted. And somebody said, boy, I'd love to have some ice cream. And I thought of, how can I make ice cream? So I filled up a helmet of snow and brought it back. I mixed it with evaporated milk and chocolate syrup and vanilla and sugar, and we had ice cream.
On Christmas Day, news reaches Bastogne that the western spearhead of the German 2nd Panzer Division has been stopped just short of the Meuse. Americans speculate that the powerful tank division might now turn back on them in full force. When Hitler is told by his generals they can't reach the Meuse, much less the English Channel, he orders the expected all-out attack on Bastogne.
What people don't realize about Bastogne is that when the Germans got to Bastogne, they bypassed it. And the actual heavy fighting at Bastogne wasn't until later, after the Panzers had failed to reach the Meuse. Then they turned back to Bastogne and tried to encircle it and capture it. And of course the Americans held Bastogne. By that time they'd been reinforced. So Bastogne, while it was important, was not the whole Battle of the Bulge.
Unit arrived prepared to fight immediately. Working to the American advantage is Adolf Hitler, who tells his officers that the operation is irrevocable. Through his absolute commitment to the plan, the Germans initially catch the Allies by surprise. For a brief moment, it gives them hope of a renewed victory.
The picture of Bastogne looks like this as Christmas 1944 approaches. The Germans have pushed beyond and surrounded the city, creating a bulge in the wall. Approximately 50 miles southeast of Bastogne, Gumps' 5th Division is shown re-engaging the Germans at the southern shoulder of the Bulge with the purpose of relieving pressure on Bastogne.